Good morning and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folani. We're in that rainy season. It's drizzling all over the place. Probably it's the same where you were at. Anyway, well, today is Thursday and today we have the pleasure actually of doing something a bit different, featuring, as it were, one of ours, in other words, one of us, a journalist, but he will describe himself as a citizen journalist as well as a blogger. And he started out in the University of Lagos, but he's been in the US for about 17 years, and 10 years ago, he floated the platform Sahara Reporters. OMOYELE SOWORE is my guest this morning. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you for bringing me.
Now, let me go back to, first of all, the beginning. Well, not the very, very beginning, because we don't have that time, and there's so very much to be told. Today, you're into political activism through journalism. You're a citizen journalist, and you started out in the University of Lagos, which you entered, I believe, in 1989.
That's correct.
And you took a degree in geography.
Geography and planning, yes.
Geography and planning.
Yes.
I imagine whatever else you were doing, you would have been into student activism, student union government. Is that right?
That's correct. I got to the point of becoming the president of the student union between 1992 and I was there until 1994.
And since then, just cutting it, as I said, you've been in the US for 17 years, but 10 years ago you floated your platform, your online news platform, Sahara Reporters.
Yes.
Now, I'm hearing that I'm going to be asking about the funding, because it's really spread all over the place. Just about everybody knows about Sahara Reporters. I hear that the Ford Foundation, has been giving it some grants. Is the Ford Foundation the sole sponsor, the main sponsor, a part sponsor? In other words, how are you funded?
Well, I started by self-funding Sahara Reporters. I started Sahara Reporters with less than, I would say, $20.
$20.
Yes, I bought a domain name in 2005 and started hosting Sahara Reporters with $20 on a platform with someone who was actually only hosting websites that were related to gardening. So he had no idea that this website was shaking the world until they knocked out his server. And I moved from there to Yahoo, hosting services there, which was costing me $50 a month. The other costs associated with Sahara Reporters at that time was just with calling cards, making calls to Nigeria and several people and sources. It wasn't that expensive when I started, but the moment it started to balloon, it started costing more money for me. So Ford Foundation did not come into the picture until 2009, but I started Sahara Reporters in 2006.
And when Ford Foundation came, it's not as if it was an open check. I was reading something about $175,000.
No, I think the first grant was less than that, but that wasn't a lot of money compared to the cost of running a website, even at that time. But what made Ford Foundation popular with Sahara Reporters was it was also in 2009 that Sahara Reporters broke into the global space with the release of the picture of the Nigerian underwear bomber, Abdul Farouk, whatever his name is, that we released. He was trying to bomb an airliner over Detroit, and the US media, including international global media, could not find who he was and find his photograph. We found it and published it, and that was the first time that everybody around the world knew about our style of journalism, which was the citizen journalism you mentioned.
When you talk about our style of journalism, referring to your style in Sahara Reporters and perhaps your personal style,
Yes.
do you feel the pressure? Because there are those in conventional journalism, shall we use that term for lack of a better expression, who say that you give scant attention to this whole matter of ethics, the ethics of the profession. You don't seem scared to run with a story once you have been personally convinced.
Well, there's a difference between mainstream journalism and what we call Main Street journalism. And I'm a practitioner of the latter, which is Main Street. And if you look at our style, you see that we provide a lot of evidence, raw evidence that the mainstream, the conventional journalists would not provide. If, for example, there is someone who has stolen money and I have a copy of the check that he deposited in a bank, I'll put it on the website.
Okay.
Accessible to everybody.
Okay.
We provided audio recordings, we provided video recordings, we provided text messages, we provided photos to back up our stories, especially when we're challenged. So when people talk about ethics of journalism, I would think that the ethics of journalism is to tell the truth, it's not to cover it. But what they call ethics in this part of the world, or in the mainstream or conventional journalism, is to hide, the information as much as possible and give the public just enough to titillate them about news reporting. So they will divide it up and start giving you bits and pieces of it.
But they will say that they're going about it from a point of view of due process.
But
that
it's also,
everybody has a right to not be, charged with anything unless there's adequate proof.
But it's also commercial too, So when you break down a story that ought to be given at once into 5 hours, you're making money off of it. When you bring somebody to come analyze a story that's already well known, you're making money off of it. You're gaining attention. You're trying to promote yourself out there. We're not trying to do that. We're not competing with you guys. We're just telling the stories as they come to us, as instantaneously, in a way that people can act upon them before it gets too late. So we are different in that regard. I do not argue with the mainstream guys who want to do things the way they do it, which is the old way. But there's now a new way of doing it. That's why we belong to the new media genre. You belong. I don't know if it's right to call you the old media, but if we want to look at it, you guys have been around for a long time. Like they usually say, journalism is. Prostitution is the oldest profession in the world. But I usually think journalism is the oldest profession because it's journalists that detected prostitutes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now you've in the 10 years that you've been in existence, that is your blog or your platform now.
Yes.
It's a blog still, but it's a platform as well. I don't know. Did you want to say something about that?
Well, it's not a blog.
It's not a blog anymore.
It's a multimedia platform, actually, because we run the website, which is a text section of it. We actually have a TV online that's known as Sahara TV. We ran the Sahara FM radio online for a little bit, and it's coming back. So it's a full spectrum of media. It's not. There's no part of our operation that can be referred to as blogging.
That's
because blogging is someone who takes other people's story, writes a little comment on it.
Okay.
But
blogging could also be people generating your own original content.
Well, it's something that I'm describing to you the way I understand it. I usually don't refer to myself as a blogger.
So it's an online news platform.
Yes. I call it a digital news platform.
Okay.
Yes.
I think I mentioned that you're not shy to go with stories once you feel that you have the proof that is necessary.
Yes.
But let me go back to your UNILAG days.
Yeah.
You came out with a degree in geography and planning, as you said.
Yes.
Did it take you longer to get your degree than usual?
Oh yes. I spent 6 years at the University of Lagos, expelled by the university authorities twice for political reasons. So I did not graduate from University of Lagos officially until 1995. But when I ordered for them to send me my transcript when I was going to do my master's, they claimed that I graduated in 1993.
Well, how do you explain that?
I think they were trying to escape liability in case I decided to go there. They may take them to court one day for wasting my time for political reasons. But that's what came out of their own official documents. But I did not physically leave Unilag until 1995 because they held on. After I was expelled twice, they also held on to our university results for months before I could go for NYC. Went to NYC in Yola, Adamawa State, and I was arrested and detained. It was under Abacha, and never given an NYC certificate until today.
Well, quite an active kind of a life then. But you had to find your way, as it were, out of Nigeria at a certain time. Why did you feel that pressure?
It wasn't pressure.
Okay.
It was like, I was attacked at the University of Lagos, and I had, issues that were medical in nature at that time, and so I had to go for treatment or to seek treatment, and then decided to not come back immediately. Part of it was that, I left in 1999, and Nigeria was approaching, the first election in a new democratic era that I had fought for my entire life. And I knew that it wasn't going to take Nigeria to that new level that was my expectation. So I decided to just use that period to not only take care of myself, but also have some kind of, education empowerment. So I did a master's degree over there. Partially to prove to the people at Unilag who said I was a layabout that I could actually do well as well. Yeah.
Okay, you've also been referred to as a rabble-rouser, mostly probably by people in the conventional journalism, as you can imagine. No skin off your nose, apparently. You continue to do what you're going to do. You ruffle feathers. You don't seem to be apologetic over the fact.
No, I don't. Generally, when something new comes out of nowhere, people would say all kinds of things about the operators or the originators of those ideas. And that has always been the nature of humanity, humankind. I remember coming back to this country for the first time in 2003, and people said, where have you been? And then I came back after Sahara Reporters, and there was something huge that happened, and I was traveling to Nigeria through Benin Republic, and I met Obasanjo's son at the border. He gave me a lift, and I did an interview with him that was published then by News magazine, and nobody had ever seen anything like that before. And people were abusing me and insulting me. But it was that interview that saved Nigeria from his third-term plan, because his son made a whole lot of disclosures that made people understand how Obasanjo was thinking. That was 2005, December. But by 2006, when I started Sahara Reporters officially, people just couldn't understand where we're coming from. They didn't understand the style, where this guy's coming from. But, the saddest part, or the unfortunate part of it, is that these same people who call us rabble-rousers rely on our breaking news to populate their own individual or business news platforms.
At least you find people quoting Sahara Reporters.
Even when they don't quote, some of them sometimes outrightly even plagiarize our stories, shamelessly.
And you've become used to that.
Of course, we're not there to police how people steal the stories. We are more interested in how people use the stories. So we are writing for the public. We are writing not for the media, but the public.
You're writing for the public. Yes. In fact, you
or publishing for the
publishing for the public. Yeah. And indeed, you prefer to be referred to as a citizen journalist.
Citizen reporter.
A citizen reporter.
Yeah, because I don't want to drag myself through the whole argument about whether I'm a journalist or not.
Okay.
So I leave that to people who went to journalism school to call themselves and brand themselves the way they want. You don't need a journalism degree to be a reporter.
Whose interest would you be serving? Because people believe that a thing doesn't just happen for happenstance sake. Papers are known to have those that they identify with. TV stations, perhaps. Whose interest would you say that you are serving? Is it the citizenry?
My conscience, first and foremost. My conscience, yes.
First and foremost, your conscience.
Yes.
And this whole matter about uncovering the truth.
It's in the interest of the public,
For instance, just off the top of my head now, just remembering back in the day, in the heady elections days, there was the case in Ekiti and audio recording, and you put all of that audio on your website.
That's correct.
And you weren't even worried about, wait a minute, how do we authenticate this? How do we know? Because there were denials, as you recall. There were denials that the whole thing was fake, but you were able to go ahead.
We were sure that it was authentic. But don't forget that also had been authenticated and validated in New York before we published it. And this is some of the things people don't know about our operations. And they just say things that, are reckless. And naturally with Nigerian politicians, the attitude is to lie first and admit later, and with the hope that they can confuse the public. But in that case, as you've mentioned, everybody denied it at first. Fayose said it never happened. Omishore said it never happened. Obanikoro said, lie, this was not true. But then they started admitting gradually. In fact, it was Adesina who was the first to rat them out. That was the police minister of police affairs at that time. He said, yeah, we met at the hotel. But he said he wasn't sure that some of the things that were exposed were said at that meeting. And when people listened to it more and more, they realized that this was really authentic. Obanikoro, as a matter of fact, in an attempt to cow us, went and sued us in New York. And when he wasn't satisfied with suing us, he came back to Lagos to sue us. But now we know who is telling the truth.
He sued you in New York. Where did that go?
Well, we're still in court, but it's nothing new.
It looks like you take this on as part of the territory with doing what you're so impassioned about.
Yeah.
Even the current Senate president, for instance, has not escaped your attention. And on one hand, people might say that, hang on, SOWORE, aren't you being almost reckless with some of the things that you are saying? How would you say, because it goes back to the question of whose interest are you serving? But you said your conscience.
Yes.
Your conscience first and foremost.
Yes. I mean, you mentioned the Senate president.
Bukola Saraki.
Yeah, Bukola Saraki. And I've been covering Bukola Saraki since 2005. When I first worked with a fellow known as Elendo, Jonathan Elendo, he set up Elendo Reports, so I was his partner. And we were first to discover a lot of things about his shenanigans. And he'd ruined the bank. He just practically looted the bank and his family. And these were documented because they have victims out there who lost money to the bank. But he didn't stop there. He became the governor of his state. He used the money of the state to buy houses in London.
But those things were never proved categorically, and that's the problem.
No, that's not correct. These things are before the Code of Conduct Bureau today. But the Code of Conduct Bureau
has not pronounced on them.
Well, the court, these are public documents. There's a public proceeding going on. But we are not bound by the Code of Conduct Bureau. They actually came 10 years late, right? It is now some of the documentation that were put in the public domain that even the Code of Conduct Bureau is using in prosecuting the Senate president. But my position is this: if James Ibori is in jail for financial crimes, there's no reason why Nigeria should reward Bukola Saraki with the Senate presidency of the country. It's just, unconscionable.
Now that's
to promote this kind of a financial criminal. Number three position of the country. And I'm making this definite position, by the way, Mr. Yori, because I've covered him to the extent that I found out in 1992 was the first time he stole from his bank, this Societe Generale Bank. There's a public document by the police. He was charged for stealing 500,000 naira alongside his sister. This is public document. And we've had police documents. We have EFCC documents showing that this man has stolen and stolen. In fact, his only profession, as far as I know, is stealing. The only thing he has done publicly to Nigeria before he became Senate president was being an NYSC corps member.
And this Nothing else. And this is the problem why people might... What I mean, let me just finish.
Go ahead.
This is the problem why people might now question what exactly your interests are, because the detachment of facts, for instance, were absent in what you've just said, because you actually called him names.
Yes.
You actually...
Absolutely. And I've called him names to the extent that it is my opinion, but more importantly, it's backed by facts. You know how they say, you know how Fela Kuti used to say, like, let him take me to court, I go open book for him.
You feel that sure about stuff that
the documents that I'm referring to, they are now before a law court in this country. It's undergoing trial for these offenses.
Okay.
And the trial has not been concluded. But I'm not waiting for the trial to be concluded, knowing the Nigerian legal system, in making my own pronouncement as a citizen who has been robbed of my fundamental rights, in terms of prosperity by characters like this. So, I also have a personal stake in this.
Okay.
Yes.
You see, in times past, recent times past, people might have said you were working for the opposition. In this present time now, people might say you're working for somebody. Have you had links? Since you've been as forthright as you have been, can you forthrightly say to me that you don't have a link or links to parties, political parties?
No, I don't have any. I don't know any party chairman. Never met any one of them before. Never met a party secretary. As a matter of fact, I avoid meeting with people who have political positions. But you know, in Nigeria, people just, when they can't understand how you operate, they ascribe all kinds of things to you, which is legitimate. It's a right of theirs to hold those kind of opinions about me or about my operations. I don't have a problem with that. That's what I stand for, the right of people to say what they want to say and do so freely. But when you look at some of the allegations or some of the accusations out there, you find that, you know, this country has very short memory in terms of some of the people making the allegations, especially politicians.
Sure.
For example, I'll give you an example of Jonathan, which is the most toxic in recent time of, you know, allegations coming from his own side that were supporting the Buhari people. But it was Sahara reporters, and you can check this out, that fought the Yaradua cabal. I'm talking about the late President Yaradua. People who took him into hiding and were running the country illegally were the ones who were exposing, including declaring that Yaradua had died when they said he was jumping around, which was seen at that time as supportive of Jonathan. In fact, we were accused directly by his people of working for Jonathan to become president. But I never met Jonathan in my life. And I'm not likely to meet him anytime soon. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to meeting people, but I just don't know them. So Jonathan came to power. We started holding Jonathan to, you know, to his promise to run Nigeria properly. He wasn't doing it. They were stealing and robbing. We were exposing and reporting it, right? And it favored the opposition people. And of course, we're accused of working for the opposition. Now that Buhari has come to power, and Sahara Reporters is reporting that his chief of army staff has bought houses in Dubai that he couldn't explain, and that the internal affairs minister has houses in the US, millions of dollars, that show that he must have participated in looting the army resources during his time in the army, during Yaradua's time.
According to your deduction?
It's not a deduction. We have documents to show this. You know, now they are accusing us of working for Boko Haram. This is the accusation officially from the Nigerian army and some of the Nigerian government people. So it shows to you that we don't work for anybody. We work for ourselves.
Because everybody is saying you're working for the other party.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
Now, probably the government of Buhari will start accusing us of working for the PDP very soon. You understand? So this is the nature of course, our work. But we're not partisan. Like I said, first and foremost, we're working for, and we work with like-minded people across the world.
Are you getting any sponsorship from within Nigeria?
No, we're not.
You can say that categorically?
Oh, yes. I mean, the only thing that would be different is if you consider advertisement on the website as some sponsorship. But we don't have relationship in which somebody says to me, hey, SOWORE, come and take money so that you can fund your, no, we do not accept it.
Or in appreciation that, you know, you're doing a fantastic job.
No, I've challenged everybody, you know. I mean, you know, you just don't give money to people without evidence, right? I've challenged anybody to, you know, publish to the world if he has ever heard or seen me collect money from anybody or heard Sahara collect money from anybody. No, we've just explained to you how we're funded. You know, we're funded through adverts, which is legitimate. From Google AdSense is where we started. So we have a bunch of direct advertisers. We do not, as a policy, accept adverts from people in government or government agencies. Okay. You know, because we don't believe that, you know, you need to advertise government or the job of a government. Even in some cases, government is interested or involved in commercial activities, but just not to create an appearance of conflict of interest against what we do, because our primary focus is on public sector corruption, and also private sector. So you don't have a situation where somebody says, well, you know, I'm giving you advert because, you know, I don't want you to write something about it. So we do not accept government.
What's the latest corruption story that you're working on or that has only recently been published?
You know, I sometimes can't even catch up. on these things myself because it's beyond just me sitting down here. A lot of people are working as we're speaking.
How big is Sahara Reporters in terms of manpower, personnel?
I would say it's big, but not huge yet, because we're also maintaining a lean platform, so that the decision-making process, the processing of news, videos, and all of that is done within reasonable time as to get them to the people who need them.
Do you have an editorial committee, board kind of arrangement?
We have all of that. But they may not exactly suit your own conventional
definition,
media definition of an editorial board. But we take decisions based on facts that are available to us. And we have groups within Sahara Reporters that takes these decisions and produce content that you see on a daily basis.
Would you say then, from what you said, that by definition, Sahara Reporters being concerned with outing corrupt practices in both the private and the public sector, you only do critical stories? Do you do other stories, positive, as they say, stories?
People say that all the time. It's because a lot of people don't understand the meaning of positive, right? Sometimes in Nigeria, people think that until you go and cover the 70th birthday of, a money bag, you're not writing positive stories, or you're not kissing up to somebody.
And you don't do that? You guys don't do that?
No, we don't, of course. That is not positive. Those ones are like fluffs. We deal with very serious stories. But I give you an example of a positive story that's changed our democratic experience in this country, which was last year, when we published first on a website the results of the 2015 elections in such a way that the ruling party couldn't change the results. People didn't believe when they first saw the 10 first results on our website. It wasn't until INEC published their own result, and they tallied exactly with ours, almost figure for figure, that people realized that, oh my God, these guys have been working very, very hard to get us the results. Well, what did we do in that case? We took the night out of the way they operate with election results. If you had gone overnight, your guess would have been as good as mine. And if they had rigged that election, probably we wouldn't be talking about Nigeria today. I don't see anything more positive than that, where you put people in the direction where there was minimal violence, because people saw that election as transparent, because they were getting instantaneous reporting of the results of the election, which has never happened in this country before. In the past, we used to wait for INEC. If we did in 2015, you can imagine what would happen, especially considering what the likes of the former minister of Niger Delta, Urubebe, went and did in an attempt to disrupt even the announcement of the elections. So we've done several of those things, but I don't try to be on the defensive as to our style, because our style is very clear. If you're going to Sahara Reporters to read news, you are not in doubt as to what you are going to find there. So defending that, whether a story is positive or not, is not my style.
I would imagine you need to have a lot of folk that you work with here, you personally being based in New York, and yet you have you have your eyes on Nigeria. How does that work?
Sometimes I say to people, if I didn't come to your studio today, you probably wouldn't know I'm in Nigeria. So it's very difficult to know where I'm based.
It's difficult to know how you come and go, right?
Exactly. It's difficult to know where I'm based. So you just assume that I'm based in New York. I may not be in New York. For example, during the Nigerian election in 2015, I was in Nigeria for 6 weeks, operating underground. But people thought I was in New York until I made physical appearances inside.
But you still need a team on ground here.
There is a team. There's no question about that. There's a team. It's just that you're not going to find them. That's why we call them citizen journalists. You could be part of it. You might have been part of it. So it's an underground movement. It's a movement. It's a media movement of people who are passionate about ensuring that our Commonwealth is not frittered or stolen by people in power.
Okay.
And they provide evidence, and we publish.
We got to go on a short break.
All right.
We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere, please.